Shoot. I think we are live. There we go. Lucky me. I forgot to go double check restream, but hey, sometimes it works out in your favor. Bad little habit I've gotten into because I lucked out last weekend doing 3 shows with Josh. Two on Saturday, 1 on Sunday. I didn't have to do any producing, Chris.
You got spoiled by that Josh experience, but no, you got to work hard now. I just get to sit back and relax and watch the EMAC show go down.
There we are. Well, I'm handing the control tower over to one Chris Spags as we are the awesome MLB Live Before Lock for Saturday, and we've got 13 games, so let's not screw around.
Yeah, we won't waste time here, but we will give one quick shout out to our sponsor of Live Before Lock, Fantasy Draft. Fantasy Draft is the home of rake-free daily fantasy, and rake-free daily fantasy is here for you, and it's available only on Fantasy Draft. Now you can play your favorite contest rake-free on Fantasy Draft, where 100% of the entry fees are paid to contest winners. For a limited time, Fantasy Draft is offering a free 7-day trial on your first $1,000 in rake-free entries. So go right now to FantasyDraft.com. Use the promo code AWESEMO to claim your free 7-day trial right now. And EMAC, you're a seasoned veteran of DFS and of life and a handsome older gentleman. So I'm going to turn to you for your wisdom and your beauty in the same turn here. Tell me about Fantasy Draft and why rake-free daily fantasy is why the people should be getting on board.
All right, so rake-free is quite interesting. Now, the thing you want to know about that is a lot of sites, 16%. Now, sometimes cash games are less, but in the 10 to 12% range, but your mileage may vary. But what they're doing here is going to a subscription model, and your games are rake-free. Now, it's based upon your entry volume, and then you can buy different levels each month, but it's only like $5 for your first 1,000 or something along those lines. So it's very, very nice. Now, the other thing that you want to remember is as things get tougher and tougher and the market gets tougher and tougher, those of us that were playing DFS, 2011, 12, 13, 14, in the glory days, contests were not filling, and it was basically 10% management fee or rake. So that was coming out of the prize pool. So effectively, we probably were running at about a 15 to 17% rake free most of the time back then in a lot of the contests. Now, today, that doesn't happen. They do a better job of right-sizing contests, etc., but they've also increased the rake as they had to pay for ads, lawsuits, and then trying to get DFS legal in various states. So what Fantasy Draft is saying is, hey, come over here, play some volume, and I think you can play $100 a month and not in entry fees and not even have to worry about it. So if you haven't been over there, it's fun. I'm wearing my Fantasy Draft t-shirt. I used to play over there quite a bit, have not been doing it as much this year, but I will get back into it for football. I have a hard enough time playing multiple sites and being on air and having a full-time job, so it's a little tricky. But the thing you want to remember for them is they have 2 starting pitchers, which we like. They have 3 infielders, 3 outfielders, and 2 utilities. So while not quite positionless baseball, it's a lot more flexibility, so you don't run into the choice issues you have when you have a designated hitter and a first baseman that are both first baseman, or an outfielder and a designated hitter who is outfielder, and you got to pick between them. Usually it's first base, but definitely something to check out. And it's a little softer competition. They do have similar limited entries. They aren't capped, but they do cap them at about 3% of the player of the overall player pool, and then they do have CSV upload, but the prize pools aren't quite as large, so that does not necessarily attract the mega apex predators until we get to football. So if you pop over there, you can oftentimes find a little bit of room in the contest, so that is added value. Now you have to monetize that, of course, but there you go. All right.
So there you go. That was a credible argument that you presented there. So go check it out now. Guys, go to FantasyDraft.com at this moment and go use that promo code AWESEMO to get your 7-day trial, $1,000 in rake-free entries over at Fantasy Draft. And thank them for sponsoring the show. All right, let's get down to the nitty-gritty here, EMAC. We do have one chalk pitcher today who stands above the rest, Mr. Aaron Nola, going against the White Sox. He has the lowest implied total on the day, I believe, at least the last that I checked. Looking in a strong spot here. The White Sox, not a team who's going to offer a lot of resistance in this spot. Let me just pull up this real fast. Why would that not come up? But yeah, Nola, I'm very comfortable with Nola today. I wanted to get to Strasburg more, and I did force some Strasburg in there. But you have a 27.4% K rate in this White Sox lineup today, and that's not including Ross Detweiler, who's in there. He's not a guy who's had an at-bat versus a righty pitcher, but he's a bad hitter as well, presumably. Going to give even more strikeouts than are on paper. The only guy I would worry about in this lineup is Jose Abreu, who has just a 100 WRC plus, which is the best on the White Sox lineup against right-handed pitching. I can't really see a reason to not go to Nola here, given his price and the matchup and how he projects. But maybe you're seeing something different, Emac?
Nope, I think Nola is going to be the guy. I do have a ton on my Yahoo teams here. He is coming in at 51. Now, he's a little bit more expensive, but they have some cheap hitters that will allow you to do that. You can pair him with Walker Buehler and or maneuver in Matt Boyd, as well. So we do have some high-end options here. We do have Coors Field on the slate, but we are looking at John Gray going against Madsen Bumgarner, and even though there's or last I looked, there was like 11.5 or 12 implied run total. Those are both solid pitchers. And, we've seen the last the 3 games for the Dodgers in Coors Field, as well as last night's game. We haven't been into double-digit run totals, or they have not actually exceeded the implied run totals for those games. Now, it's really warm today in Colorado. These things can turn on a dime. So even though there are good pitchers in this one, doesn't matter. They can get BABIP, which is batting average on balls in play. They can get unlucky. It's all sequencing what's going on. And one thing that we like to remember is in Coors Field, it's not necessarily about the home runs. It's about that gigantic outfield that if you have gap power, you can get doubles and triples, which is very helpful if people are on base.
Yes, that is a part of the isolated power that you would look at as well. But yeah, I think overall for me, I'm going to be above the field on Nola. I think just to put a capper on it, he's going to be a hair under 40% owned according to our current projections for DraftKings. I really find it hard to not get there. And for me, I'm going to go a little bit above it because I just feel comfortable with him in a way which I don't feel comfortable with everybody else. We do have some other high price pitchers here, Emac, who could be pivots. And some of these guys here, I mean, I don't think from a value standpoint, any of them come particularly close. But Trevor Bauer has been a guy who's had that upside. He still has a good strikeout rate on the year. Going back to last season, he has a 29.4% K rate overall, which would be just behind Robbie Ray on the slate in terms of the top number. It was a strong spot. His first start for Cincinnati as well. For me, though, going against Atlanta in the first start, I think Atlanta can give up some strikeouts, but a team I'm not generally dying to target against. And I think Bauer is the guy who would jump out as a pivot to me. Is he somebody you'll have any of? Because the field's going to be really low on him now.
No, I actually am not, because I don't like the matchup and I don't like the price. Now, I'm also not taking any Atlanta hitters in this scenario either. So it's just something I'm staying away from all sides of this one. A little bit of interest there with the Cincinnati hitters. They got young guy batting 6 that just recently came up. Adam was mentioning he does have decent power, so that is someone that I think we can give some consideration to as a discount dandy, shall we say, batting 6th. And hey, look, we are officially now sponsored by FantasyDraft. Josh just gave me the logo, and it is posted.
Oh, there we go. So go to FantasyDraft.com and use that promo code OSMO for your 7-day trial here on Rake-Free DFS, the only rake-free DFS site out there across the board. So go check them out. Yeah, I'm with you on Bauer overall. I agree the price is not the best, especially when you have Nola at cheaper. I do think there is some tournament logic in going to Bauer, especially if he's just going to be 5% owned. I think if you're putting in a bunch of entries or even a max 20, I think just having a handful of Bauer entries just does make sense because he does project well. In terms of raw points, I think he does have that upside and a strong 28% K rate on the year. So it's been a little bit worse than he was last year, but still strong enough to justify the exposure here. And, Atlanta does have 4 guys who strike out above league average in that lineup today. And the pitcher as well, Keuchel, who hasn't struck out a lot so far this year, but actually, no, he has. Excuse me. My bad. I was looking at the wrong column. 72% K rate for Keuchel so far this year. So that's not good. So maybe some free strikeouts there for him, for Bauer. And I don't mind that as a concept. What about the other high-priced pitchers here, Emac? Because we do have Robbie Ray at a similar price point, Matthew Boyd, and Steven Strasburg, who I'm intrigued by, but he doesn't project that well for us with our projections at Osmo.com. Which of those 3 would you favor here out of Ray, let's say Ray, Boyd, and Strasburg?
So they all have come with a little bit of a question mark. For me, it's going to be Boyd because he's going against the Rangers, and they generally have better lefties than they do righties in their lineup. So it's while it will be hot in Texas, this is a place where I am going to be actively looking to take Boyd, where I'm not going with Nola or with Buehler. Now, the interesting thing is it's going to be 83 degrees at first pitch here. We have a little bit of a wind coming in from Texas. The way their ballpark's set up is that it's essentially neutralized and not that big of a deal. And there's a little bit of a chance of rain coming in there in the later innings. So a little bit of risk with him. If we look at Strasburg, he has a nice matchup, but he is on the road. The roof will be closed in Arizona. He's a little more expensive on some of the sites, but he has been phenomenal this year. Now, Arizona, no walk in the park against them, despite no Goldschmidt. Now he's with the Cardinals. No AJ Pollock, who's with the Dodgers, etc. But they've still been a pesky team. But I'm okay with Strasburg. And then the third would be Robbie Ray. He was held out of yesterday's game. They pitched Alex Young, I believe, is who pitched for them last night. Now he's going against oh, sorry.
He had a good game too.
Yeah, he's got tougher matchup here against Washington. I wanted to see what their implied total is. It's only 4.3, but they do have a lot of tough outs in this. Now you've got Rendon, Soto, who's good in lefty-lefty matchups. They bumped Kurt Suzuki up because, of course, no Zimmerman, no Matt Adams. That'd be lefty-lefty, but those guys are both hurt. Trey Turner will be tough, but Dozier has rediscovered the power stroke, and he's had us a long career against lefties. And then Gerardo Parra, that feels a little bit like revenge, but lefty-lefty matchup, he can acquit himself just fine. But Robbie Ray, a lot of walks, a lot of strikeouts. His last 3 games, I think he had basically the equivalent of 9-1 strikeouts to walks, which is amazing. But we've seen a lot of games where he's had 4 or 5 walks, and that burns his pitch count because he also throws for a lot of strikes and tends to strike guys out. So not a lot of balls in play on him. So if he doesn't have his stuff, it can be a more abbreviated outing. We'll still get 100 pitches from him. He won 109 against the Marlins in his last start. I think the one before that he had 100 or 103, and that was 99, 98. So you're going to get bang for your buck there, but not an easy matchup going against I almost said the Wizards, the Nationals.
If you're going against the Wizards, you might be doing a little better overall. But yeah, I mean, the Nationals are a tough team. They don't strike out a bunch of 20.8% K rate on the year, which is under league average versus left-hand pitching. And Robbie Ray, he has some struggles versus righties. The K rate's there for everybody. I mean, he's over 31% versus both sides of the plate. Versus lefties, getting a little bit more with a 33% K rate. So there are some lefties in this lineup who we should have a better time with. But yeah, I agree. The walk rate, the power that he gives up. I mean, he gives up a 195 ISO to right-handed batters. That is a substantial amount of power, even though the park's going to help him out. But I do think Strasburg is interesting on the other side. It's 13% projected ownership on DK. He's getting a park upgrade here, going into a park in Arizona, which has been limiting production pretty well. Just 0.85 runs for every 1 run across the league so far. 4 implied total run against him is not the best, but not one of the worst ones either. But that's certainly 4 implied runs in the modern MLB is not bad at all. And the Diamondbacks, just not a great team versus right-hand pitching. They, on the year, just a 90 WRC+, still not striking out a bunch either with a 21.5% K rate, but Robbie Ray will offer up some Ks. 4 guys in that lineup above league average on strikeout rate, and I think Strasburg's stuff's been good enough on the year. He's got a 13.9% swinging strike rate, 30% K rate overall. Those are good numbers for Strasburg at that price, and if Nola did somehow get blown up, I don't think it's likely, but it's not an impossibility. I think that Strasburg is a guy who I feel like has a pretty decent floor and a decent ceiling in this spot. Let's move on to the other pitchers, EMAC, because we do have some other guys. Actually, one other guy we should talk about because he's coming up a lot for me with our projections at Awesemo.com, which you can also get at Awesemo.com/join and use that promo code live before lock for half off your first month of Awesemo Plus. Walker Buehler projects really well. I'm getting a lot of Buehler and Nola lineups in my crunches so far. Are you going to have Buehler? Because Buehler's ownership is now up to just under 30% expected for him.
I'm comfortable with that. Nice matchup against the Padres, who do strike out a fair amount. Let's go see what the Padres lineup gave us. They have Eric Hosmer, Josh Naylor, and Greg Garcia batting from the left side. We don't worry about Greg Garcia. We really don't worry that much about Josh Naylor. And hey, it's Hosmer. He's adequate, but not really going to scare me against a guy like Buehler. Could this go sideways? You betcha. Could Buehler get less than 100 pitches? Absolutely. But I think if we get 90, 95 pitches from Buehler, they're going to be quality and in a spot where we could see him flirt with double-digit strikeouts. That is going to be the upside, but I would suspect we should see 1 strikeout per inning. So if he can go 6 or 7 innings, get the win, as the Dodgers are 2.5 to 1 favorites against Cal Quantrill and the Pod Squad, I'm okay with that, particularly on Yahoo. I think he will be on 6 of my 10 lineups tonight.
Yeah, I agree. I think Buehler's in a pretty good spot here, and he doesn't give up those walks like you mentioned with Robbie Ray, where that is an issue of him just giving up some extra walks, eating up some pitch count as part of that process. Buehler doesn't go terribly deep, but he's going just under 6 innings per game whenever he is starting, so I think that's a pretty decent little benchmark to have. And the strikeouts are going to be there. 26% K rate for the Padres on the year versus right-hand pitching. Buehler himself is a 28% K rate. And also, I think the thing to look for him too, limits power pretty well. A 129 ISO allowed to both sides of the plate going back to last season. So he's not giving up the power, and that is something you really have to worry about against San Diego guys like Tatis, Machado, even Hosmer. I mean, those are all guys who can drive a ball out of the park, but that is one thing that Buehler has been really good at limiting. So I'm comfortable going to him too. I'm surprised I was getting both Buehler and Nola, because with this many games, I would assume I would get more high-priced hitting, but I've been getting a lot of combinations of the higher-priced pitchers together. Have you been getting that, EMAC?
Yes, and I have not had to go to as much Aaron Sanchez, and I haven't done DK yet, but on Yahoo, I have not had to really go to Aaron Sanchez or Dylan Bundy. They're both sitting there at 29, but I just locked them in to see what I could get with some lineups here. So I would say two things I saw on Yahoo. If you go 5-man stacks, you are going to get slightly better projected lineups than you are with 6-man stacks, because it gives you one more chance to get a one-off. It looks like it's kicking it out into either Marcell Ozuna, who is, I think, $7, Derek Fisher, no, not the coach, but the guy who's playing for Toronto, and then the kid whose name is escaping me at the moment, who's batting 6th for Cincinnati. That's kind of your cheap outfielder, but then it's thrown in Stephen Vogt, or one of the other mid-tier guys for the Coors Field game. So that's giving you a little bit more of a boost, about three Yahoo points more than it is if you run a 6-man stack. So just that's something you always want to kind of look at.
And the guy, EMAC, who you keep thinking of, Aristides, or Aristides, I guess, maybe it depends on the enunciation you want to give it, Aquino. So there you go. But you got to really put on your Latin flares for this one. But I think it's Aristides, maybe, or
Yeah.
Aristides, whatever.
He
Somebody
actually
will
was
chime into the YouTube chat and correct us, I'm sure.
He was born in Racine, Wisconsin.
Was he really?
So no, maybe I'm just making that up. But I wanted to see what you
would say. Wow, all right. That
I was trying to think of what is the most Midwest city I can think of at the moment. So
his family just got confused when they came over. They were like, "What? The cheeseheads? All right, I guess we'll stay here."
Let's see. So,
you mentioned Aaron Sanchez. Aaron Sanchez is going to be highly owned today. I believe in the curative powers of Houston as much as anybody, but he's projecting really well. 2.4x value, according to our projections at Osmo.com. Not a high ceiling there. He's not a great strikeout guy. But there is one thing he's done well this year. I feel like I've talked about it on shows when he's been the guy who, like, the chalk sack is going against. He keeps the ball down. He's had just a 2.9% on run rate on the year, which is at league average. Might be a little bit underneath it for this season so far. He does give up some walks, does give up some hits, a 1.7 whip, 290 batting average going against him. Only a 19% K rate. But, the Astros tend to fix guys up a little bit. We've seen it with guys like Wade Miley, who's been was a bit of a beast yesterday at an uncomfortable price point, but had a really nice day overall. Sanchez, I really don't have a problem with 25% ownership. I think that's reasonable. If he were like 50 or something at that price, probably not trying to go there. But I think at that price point, he's going to give you some value. He'll open up some salary. I'm okay with Aaron Sanchez. What are you thinking?
I'm solid with him, particularly on DK. That's where I will have a ton of him. I'm just kind of making some lineups here on Yahoo. I've got 3 more to go here. The one I did want to point out, Kyle Gibson, we didn't mention. I think he's a little spendy on some of the other sites, but 36 on Yahoo is very nice. Sanchez, you're gonna get 90 pitches from him tonight. He's only been with him 3 days. Adam and I kind of said the similar thing, wondering when his spin rate would go up or they would change his pitch mix, etc. But they got a good pitcher who has good strikeout stuff, just doesn't use it as a starter. I suspect he's going to be reliever for their playoff hopes, but in the meantime, at his price point going against the Mariners, I think he's an excellent option. Just got to know, things can go sideways for us, but at that price point, I'm willing to do it more so than Adrian Sampson.
Yeah, I agree with that. Adrian Sampson, I could see the logic where people are going there, even though it is obviously going to be a tough park, but going against Detroit, never really a bad spot. But yeah, I would agree. I think Sampson does offer a bit of risk. With the ownership being comparable, Sampson going to be projected for just slightly less than Aaron Sanchez overall. I would rather go to Sanchez too, even though it's, it is Detroit, and Detroit is a team who, really has nothing to offer there. Even though Travis DeMerite is propping up their numbers a little bit with his limited sample size. Really nothing to look forward to for Detroit on the year. 27% K rate going against Adrian Sampson. The thing is, Sampson's just not good either, and it is still not as hot in Texas, I guess, as it usually is. So if you want to make one argument for Sampson, that would give him a positive here. Where are you going to be on the field relative with Sampson then if you're going to have some Sanchez? Because Sampson is going to be a quarter of the field owned.
I will probably match him. That will allow me to make sure I get at or above the field with most of those top end guys. Particularly, I'd like to be over for Buehler, over for Nola, and then I'm willing to sacrifice Ray or Strasburg coming in under. I'll still have some of them in my lineups, but I figure I will probably have Sanchez or Samson on about 2/3 of my lineups. So I'll take a more aggressive stance. We'll see how that breaks out once I start crunching on there. I think we have all the. Do we have all the lineups in?
Yeah, we do. We've had them all very timely today. Ironically, on a Saturday, everybody's working hard.
It is. Now, the one thing in our favor is most of these games are early-ish. The bulk of the games are going off in the 7 o'clock hour, a couple in the 8 o'clock hour. And then the Dodgers, I think, is the last game. Reminder, that I do want to point out is going to be a 6:10 local start. Going to be a little warmer there in LA than it is typically. And starting, it's not the 7 o'clock start, it's the 6 o'clock start, which they do a fair amount over there. But you'll want to remember that when it's warmer, it does play a little bit more as a hitter's park than it does as a pitcher's park. So it goes from about 95 run factor to about 105 when it gets warmer. So marginal at best, but that does give a little bit of a shift. So I like. I'm not worried about Buehler, but I really like the Dodgers bats. Was where I was going with that one.
Yeah, well, we will talk about those bats more in the second half, but I want to got to really luxuriate in our pitching for the first half of you, Mac. Here, don't get too excited for your hitting. I know it is a hot season, so you got to get in that.
All right. Kyle Gibson's the one guy I feel a little short on Yahoo. I like him in this matchup against Kansas City. He's a solid pitcher, and I think based on his prices on the other sites, maybe going a little overlooked on Yahoo. Now, fantasy draft, I'm okay with because you have a little bit more flexibility there with multiple positions you can get in a couple of the cheapies. DraftKings, I'm marginal with. I wouldn't play them on Yahoo. They're just FanDuel. They're on the single pitcher site. There's just too many other options that you would really need Strasburg, Ray, Buehler, Nola to have marginal. At least 2 or 3 of them to have marginal games, and it's going to be a tall order to get. Gibson to do well, plus whatever you're getting for the slight savings upping your bats. That's a bit more of a reach than I would want to go for there. Now, I'm not playing on FanDuel tonight, but I am playing on the 2 pitcher sites.
Yeah, I mean, where Gibson's priced a little better, he's not a guy in consideration on DK at 8,900, but elsewhere where the prices are a little better, he has been good on the year. I mean, I think he and Jake Odorizzi, I think people do sleep on a little bit there. And Minnesota's park does help him out a little bit when it's not that hot, but these guys have had good strikeout rates. They're missing bats pretty well. 13.5% swing strike rate for Gibson. I mentally, I think I still kind of file them away, which I guess also you can't really do that for Wade Miley either. But these guys who kind of, I file them away as a guy who just generally limits damage more and doesn't get strikeouts. But getting a 24% K rate on the year for Gibson, and he's going against a Kansas City team who's been pretty impotent versus right-hand pitching with just a 90 WRC plus, only a 155 ISO. So I agree Gibson's a good play on some of the sites out there where he's a little bit cheaper. Anybody else you're getting who's a little weird? Because I think we've covered most of the guys that I'm getting. I really keyed in today on a few guys. Actually, one dude who jumped out to me a little bit is Thomas Pannone, just as a lower owned price pivot to the guys that we talked about, the Aaron Sanchez's, the Adrian Sampsons. Pannone's been getting a decent strikeout rate, a little bit under league average, 21%. But going against Baltimore, I mean, Baltimore is not a good team at all. They strike out versus everybody. You have a couple guys in here who have Stevie Wilkerson is a negative WRC plus going against a lefty pitcher, a minus 11 and 90 at bats, which seems like that should level out at some point, but it has not leveled out yet. I don't mind Pannone here. Is he somebody you're going to have any of, you, Matt?
I'll probably set him at 5%, and if I get that, I'm okay with it because it is Baltimore. I do think Baltimore is intriguing as a somewhat discounted or contrarian stack with so many teams on the slate tonight, 26. In fact, I made Adam actually rank Pannone, Sanchez, Sampson, and Detweiler. He said he would take pretty much everybody in the minor leagues and the major leagues over Detweiler. He said Sampson he's willing to take a risk with. He no longer thinks he's the worst pitcher in the league. He thinks he might be slightly below average on his good days. And then he said, all fired up for Sanchez. But he said with Pannone, it's just a differentiation play if you're looking for something different because we don't know that Sanchez and Sampson are not going to get their ass kicked. And he said, hey, if he has an adequate start, then, if he gets you 10 DK points, that's okay if one of these other guys fails. So it's more about diversification than anything else. I would need to be playing, which I am, 100 lineups before I get to him. If I was playing 10 or 20, I wouldn't have Pano.
Okay, that's fair. I'm playing a 20 max again, which is my usual whenever I'm hosting a show, and I have him there. He does project actually it's a decent value, which I didn't realize. It makes me feel a little bit better about it. 2.2x value, so he's right in that same range as Sanchez and Samson, and from in terms of a raw points perspective, I mean it's a fractional amount of points between them. So yeah, I don't hate it, and that is one that I have a little bit of. Anybody else you're getting here? I feel like we're skipping over some guys, but I mean, you talked about Ross Detweiler, who really the only argument you can make for playing him is that Philly's going to have a good amount of ownership, and Detweiler has just been so bad on paper that he seems like he can't potentially be that bad forever, I guess would be a thing.
Yes, still wouldn't play him. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I didn't mind him as when he was with the Nationals, but he just never really reached what I thought was going to be his potential. I mean, you would be lucky this evening if he gets double-digit fantasy points. Lucky. So I'd rather roll the dice with Samson and frankly, and even Pannone over him.
Yeah, going back to last year, Detweiler's faced 130 batters almost, 1.7 whip, 4.7 xFIP, which is actually worse than, or not as bad rather as you might think, but a 353 batting average allowed, just an 11.1% K rate, 6.3% on run rate, a 250 ISO allowed. He's keeping the ball down, a 24% fly ball rate, so he's got that going for him. But everything else here for Detweiler looks bad, and doesn't seem like there's much hope for him. So he would be one guy I'm comfortable leaving out of the equation, even though I guess with the ownership on Philly, you can make a leverage play argument, but he's just not good enough to justify more than the 0.3% that he has. All right, let's see who else. Anybody else that we're getting here who is worth hitting on? Are you getting any of the projected long reliever guys like a Chance Adams or
Nope.
Who also kind of sucks and I'm not into? But anybody else weird that you're getting, Emac?
No, not at all. I do want to target. So here's the other guy that is cheap on some sites, Adam Plutko. He's got a tough matchup against the Angels. They don't strike out, literally bottom three against righties and lefties. He himself does not get a lot of strikeouts. That lineup does make me nervous with Trout and Ohtani and Cole Calhoun would be the guys I'm scared the most of. Albert Pujols, he's not horrible against righties, kind of that aging slugger thing where he's not really great against any lefties with the modicum of fastball, but he's still okay against righties. And then Luis Rengifo is leading off, which caught me a little bit off guard. $10 on Yahoo.
Oh, yeah, that is a nice little value there in the leadoff spot. And as you mentioned with Plutko, I mean, we'll talk about it in the stacks half the show. Plutko is such a weird pitcher, but just worth pointing out, he has a 5.7 xFIP, but a low 1.2 whip. But when he does give up a hit, he's got a 7% home run rate almost, a 48% fly ball rate. And to both sides of the plate, he's allowing a 284 ISO overall. So that is a strange split for Plutko. And this is a very large sample size at this point. This is like a 550 batter sample size going back to last year. And he just keeps giving up home runs and then limiting damage and then giving up home runs. A very strange pitcher, but somebody I would not want to play versus the Angels especially.
All right. Quick cash question here from SJM in the premium Slack. And he did say modicum is a good word, so I'm going to answer his question. He's asking Chris Davis or Marwin Gonzalez, fantasy draft cash. God, as much as it pains me, I'm still going to go with Chris Davis. I know he's been slumping, and yes, he's going against a ground ball pitcher, but I'm still, even in cash, because of the failure rate in baseball, his upside's going to be better than Marwin Gonzalez. I get the Marwin Gonzalez looking at him, and I don't think that's wrong. But if I'm choosing between the two, I'm still going to be chasing that upside with Davis, and frankly, whichever one gets a double, probably going to pay themselves off. So you just hope somebody's on base. But for me, it'd be Davis.
Yep, that seems fair. All right, it's that time. We're at the halfway point of the show. Let's do our dong picks. And yesterday was a real something. But you got on the board with your Alvarez. Josh, actually, I should do the standings first. So the standings right now, it is Emac still safely in first place with 22 total dongs, 21 correct picks. Jake and Josh tied in the amount of total dongs, though Jake has one more correct pick, but they both have 19 complete home runs, and Jake has 18 correct picks, Josh 17. I am still in the last place amongst our longer-term picks, 16 total dongs for me, 15 correct picks. And Chris Randone got one. He's actually gotten 2 out of his last 3 days he's made picks. He's been correct. Martin Maldonado yesterday. He is up to 3 correct picks and 3 total dongs on the year. I'm just going to go with the guy we just talked about, Adam Plutko. I'm going with Shohei Ohtani going against him.
All right. I'm going with Nelson Cruz.
Oh, I didn't know he's 39 and he's doing this. I mean, that's kind of screams PEDs, but hell of a run at 39.
Well, you, former teammate Robbie Cano, both have been suspended for PEDs.
Right.
Remember when Cano had his 3 home run game? Oh my God, is your dog really sleeping with her legs up in the air? That's pretty impressive.
She sleeps like a stuffed dog.
That's pretty impressive. But once Cano did that, 3 or 4 days later, Cruz did that. I think that was a virtual nod or hat tip across the way, just saying, "Hey, yeah, I'm back on the regimen too." So.
I mean, it's been a crazy run for him. Also, Chris Randone's pick is in. He's going with Teoscar Hernandez. So there you go. That's
nice.
Ride the hot hand with Chris Randone. He's got 2 out of his last 3. So don't let him get hot. Don't let the other Chris get hot.
Yeah, he likes a degree of difficulty, which I do appreciate.
Yeah, honestly, and the times that I didn't, so like I was on the show with Jake the other day, and he was like, take Mike Zunino, because I mentioned I accidentally got I actually had 60% Mike Zunino, which is a lot of Mike Zunino to have. And he ended up having that big day where he hit a home run, and he was right. I should have just gone with the weird pick. Instead, I went with JD Martinez, who was in a good spot. And sometimes the safe play is not the correct play. So sometimes there's beauty in the valor that people go for. Right now, by the way, we got half the show left. So get in there, get your free, your free half month of Osmo Plus. Use the promo code live before lock. If you go to osmo.com/join, you can get all the ownership projections, the player projections, the deep dive column, the lineup builder tool, the top stacks tool, which has been an upgraded in some ways. So go check it out now. Use that promo code live before lock for half off your first month of Osmo Plus. Go to osmo.com/join right now. Use that promo code live before lock. All right, EMAC, on to the stacks. Who is going to be your number 1 stack on the day? Because there are a lot of places you can go today.
Very, very disappointed that Kingery and Real Muto are not in the lineup for Philadelphia. I am still going to get a fair amount of Philadelphia. They will be number 1 for me. Number 2, I would like to work in some Minnesota. Number 3, I'm going to go with Houston. Not nearly as good of a matchup as it was last night against UC Kikuchi, who did us proud, giving up 4 round trippers, and then the reliever that came in after him gave up 2. But Marco Gonzalez does a pretty good job of limiting damage, so I think that's kind of an all or nothing play for me. And then we're going to get to Coors Field. Oh, pardon me. Dodgers would be up there. Dodgers would be ahead of... let me see. Dodgers will be 3. Philly 1, Dodgers, and Minnesota, and Houston, and then the Coors Field extravaganza. That's where I'm going with this one.
All right, so let's go bit by bit here, because you mentioned Houston up top, and they're actually a team that I'm not saying I'm fading, but I'm a little bit less in the field on, even though we do have them projected. I mean, right now, if you want to go to them, and it's on the top stacks tool, we'll give you a free preview here. They are projected. Let me just double check this didn't change at all. But in the last projection I had, they had an 8% chance of being a top stack today. Only 5% ownership on them, and that would be the highest probability of being the top stack according to Osmo's top stacks tool. So it is a spot worth going to Houston here, but I actually agree as well. I think Marco does limit damage pretty well. Not getting barreled too often, which is not a stat that I throw out too much, but just a 6% barrel rate per plate appearance, and not giving up a lot of home runs, 2.4% home run rate. And the ISO as well, just a 150 ISO to both sides of the plate going back to last year. So Marco does limit damage well. I'm never mad at anybody going to the Astros, because they have one of the best hitting lineups all around. And also Yordan Alvarez versus lefties is up to a 212 WRC plus, which is pretty crazy. Your boy, EMAC, Yordan Alvarez. But yeah, I'm with you. I think it is a tough stack to really trust going against Marco, given that he does keep things in pocket pretty well. Are you going to match the field, or are you going to mini stack? Because there is a lot of ownership for Bregman and for Altuve in particular.
Yeah, those would be the 2 guys I really like. Shoot, I didn't get over there. I'm getting ready to do some DK stuff here, but it's Springer. So it's going to be Springer, Altuve, Bregman, and I'm okay with Yordan Alvarez. He does well in lefty-lefty, and Marco Gonzalez has the slightest of reverse splits. Now, those guys are all expensive. So I think a better way of saying it is I'm going to make sure I match the field. So I'm going to have to forcefully get them in there, because they're not. I doubt they're going to come up as much where I want them to be in crunches. So a lot of times what I will do, so say I'm going to run 100 lineups, I would run 20, either 4-4 or 4-3. I would run 20 at 5-2. 20 at 5-0, 20 at 4-0, and then my last 20 or so, 10 to 20%, I save for the stacks and teams that I'm not getting. I would suspect that is where I have to get put in the Astros. Premium Chat just asked me, any Yankees? Yikes! I left them out. That could be an oversight by me. They played.
You left them out like you don't have them right now, or you left them out like you left
I have
them?
not played a single Yankee on any of my Yahoo teams.
Okay, so I am very much for the Yankees today too. They're actually my top stack right now.
Okay.
I think because I think I got less Philly in my recrunch. I like the spot here going against Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson's been really bad so far this year. He's had only faced 69 batters, which has been not so nice for him. He's given up a 2 WHIP, a 5.6 xFIP, getting hit quite well, giving up a lot of hard contact with 44%, getting barreled at a 12% rate. And that could come down. It is still just only a hair under 70 batters. But getting the Yankees here in a spot who they hit left-hand pitching well. This particular lineup hits left-hand pitching extremely well. The Yankees are a bit overowned, though, according to the top stacks tool. So if you want to take that, that's going for you. But they have a 7% chance of being a top stack. So that seems like it'd be worth some exposure to you.
All right. I'm putting in Gleyber Torres, who is batting third and 16 at second base on Yahoo. That is going to be a differentiation play because I don't think people are going to get there. But he will be the only Yankee I have in my 10 lineups that I have made.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. So we'll disagree on that one then. We'll agree to disagree on the Yankees today. But I think it's a nice spot here versus Johnson. And he really hasn't been good going back to last year either. So I think there is some solace in that, even though he does seem due to kind of figure it out a little bit compared to what he's done this year because he's been just egregiously bad and also unlucky too. He's got a 0.4 or 400 BABIP rather on the year. And that's certainly due to come down at some point. Who is going to be, I guess, who is your number 2 again that you had so far?
Philly and the Dodgers.
All right. So Philly, let's talk through Philly here because we talked about Ross Detweiler and how terrible he is. Just to go through Detweiler's numbers one more time, getting up a 1.7 WHIP going back to last year, just an 11.1% K rate. So versus the Philly team who does strike out, that's going to help him out a little bit. 6.3% home run rate going back to last year, which is very not good. Isolated power of a 248. So he's giving up good power. Philly, I think this lineup is a little bit worse than the one they had out there initially. The projected lineup had Roman Quinn in there, which I was a little more intrigued by. He had a nice return to form yesterday. But it's still one where I'm going to get to it, even though a lot of these guys, Adam Hazley has not hit lefties well in his limited sample size, and Aaron Nola is going to really be a negative value at the plate too. But I think that top 5, if you want to include Cesar Hernandez in there, he's not a great hitter versus lefties, but he's fine. But all those guys, Segura, Harper, Hoskins, and Sean Rodriguez, all over a 129 WRC plus. So I want to be there with that 4 and then get some mixes of the 5th guy in there. But what is your approach here for Philly? Because they're going to be owned for that top 4 minus Sean Rodriguez, it looks like.
I'm still fine with them. I really, really like this matchup for them. And SJM calling me out in chat, as he should, says I'm on the highway to hell because I am not rolling with the Yankees against Brian Johnson. Now, that is the beauty of me now building my DK lineups. I will not make the same, let's use air quotes, mistake like I did on Yahoo by not using them. But I'll probably, maybe 10% will be the Yankees. So that'll be interesting to see, Chris. So it seems to me that the teams that are falling out are Colorado and San Fran for us. But going, sorry, I missed the question. Philly, or I didn't answer the question. So let me get over here and look at theirs.
Wait, what?
I really like Maikel Franco. I think he is someone who is overlooked. And at 3,400 on DK, that is solid. And SJM, I did not miss the AC/DC reference at all. And I just want to say it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
Okay, there you go.
If you can't have a rock song with bagpipes in it, then I don't know what you're doing.
That is fair, and that is a fair reference to go to Brian Johnson. That is one that doesn't pop to mind for me, but that is a good one to go to. I would think if that's really the only famous Brian Johnson. I think
potentially. I mean, we've got multiple Derek Fishers and Aaron Brooks, so and D Gordons. So
that's true. Derek Fisher what surprised me. I hung out with him one time because when he was on the Phillies before he got traded to Houston, when he was in their minor league system. And he was surprisingly short, which I feel like I hold against him, even though he's got one of the shortest teammates in the league, who's an extremely good hitter. But I'm always like, Derek Fisher, a little short. I would like him to be taller.
Oh, and by the way, this is the SJM hour. He pointed out to me, I did not realize, Marcus Stroman, very short. He's 5'8".
Really?
Yeah, I went and looked it up. He's like, oh, yeah, this is his voice because I don't know it. Oh, yeah, Stroman, shortest pitcher in the league. And I went and looked. I'm like, God, at 5'8", he just might be. So
Yeah, I didn't realize that. He carries himself like a taller man. And I mean, well, that's probably as logical as the Mets trading for him in the first place, is him being that tall and that successful. So that's that's one of the most baffling trades I think of the deadline, was them just going like, yeah, let's outbid everybody else for Marcus Stroman when we're barely in the mix.
yes. Oh, SJM says he doesn't sound like that. You know, my dog sounds like this. And she claims she doesn't, but no, that is her voice. So there you go. So, I am the final judge here.
That's fair. Let's see, who else should we hit on next? So how about Boston? Because Boston's a team who interests me because so Chad Green's going to be opener there. Chad Green's had some success, and I think he's not a pitcher who I think is bad by any stretch. But Chance Adams behind him is the projected long reliever, and he's really not been that good. Not somebody I'm particularly interested in. I mean, definitely not interested in rostering, but I think he's been really bad enough where he might be worth targeting against. It's been a limited sample size this year, but going back to last year too, he's only faced 90 batters, but a 1.6 whip, giving up a good amount of well, I guess not the hard contact, but giving up a good amount of isolated power with 256 ISO, good home run rate, not really striking guys out. I think Boston versus a bad righty here, when Chance Adams gets in there, it could be a decent spot for them. And Boston has no ownership, but they are projected to be one of the better stacks on the day. What are you doing with Boston?
Sadly, I haven't even thought about them, and this is kind of embarrassing. There are just so many games on this slate. So let's step back for a moment here. I got time to do my stacks. So let's look at Boston here going against Chad Green. I didn't look at let's call up the box score for the first one and see who's probably available. Adam and I were speculating Luis Cessa and Nestor Cortez would probably be coming out of the bullpen. Get up and see who did play in the first game, because frankly, Chris Sale probably would have been better off not playing in that first game.
Oh, did he not have a good day? I didn't play the early slate because of the timing.
Yeah, there we go.
Chris Sale, really not a good Yankee pitcher for whatever reason.
Sale gave up 8 runs in 3 2/3.
Jeez.
Not good time. 4.7 ERA on the season. Quickly here for Paratopper, I would take Nola over Strasburg in tournaments. That's the popular way to go. I wouldn't hate it on FanDuel if you did go Strasburg, and just hope that Nola has a subpar outing and Strasburg does well. So let's see who pitched here. Oh, it was only Domingo Herman and Holder. So they've got a variety of bullpen arms there. They'll be relatively fresh. Which does make things a little bit more difficult here. 5.1 implied run total here for Boston. It's going to be in the low 80s at first pitch, 50% humidity, slight breeze out to left field there in the Bronx. If you're going to go, it's going to be the top 5. It's going to be Betts, Devers, Bogarts, JD, and Benintendi. I don't hate Christian Vasquez. 3,900 prices come down a little bit. So if you want to mix him in or have him as a one-off, not the worst thing you can do. But I'm still not going to get to a ton of them, frankly. Which could be my downfall tonight, Chris. We shall see.
That could be your one downfall. Though I do think you're sleeping on both the Yankees and Boston sides this one. I think this is a game, like, I do think they tend to have a good amount of pitchers duels. And again, I didn't see the game earlier, so that I don't want to misspeak out of turn completely and be completely wrong there. But I think this is one where there should be some hitting to go around. I really like the matchup for both teams in this spot. And then the ownership really, I mean, it's there for the Yankees a bit more so, but the Red Sox have actually come down throughout the day. So I'm very comfortable going to Boston here, and it doesn't take much to get above the field on them.
Yeah, it's weird that they have, I clicked off the page, what is his name? Sam Travis, 3,300. He usually does better against the lefty. Surprised that he's in there against the righty to start, but we'll see. It is a doubleheader, so he could be pinch hit for, or they could leave him out there. We'll have to see.
We'll probably find out fast. Let's see. Who else am I getting that I think... Actually, who else are you getting that we haven't hit on? Maybe Minnesota, because he did take Nelson Cruz here, and we haven't really touched on them.
I made sure I went with 2 Minnesota stacks on Yahoo just so I could get Nelly in. I like them, but they are spendy. So you are consciously deciding to go cheap with your pitchers, but wait for it. We have some cheap options that can make that happen. So I think they are adequate this evening. Okay,
that's fair. Yeah, I would agree with that take. I would say adequate is probably a fair way to put it overall. And Minnesota's home park on the year, and I'm only looking at this year sample size, but really hasn't been great for power. Just a 0.82 home run rate for every 1 home run across the league. And it's not the hottest day there, only 82 degrees as well. I guess it's kind of weird that they're both 82s. but not the hottest days. So that could be a wrong take here because the Twins do have a ton of power, 230 ISO on the year versus left-hand pitching. But I do think in terms of tiebreakers on the slate, when playing a max 20 entry, I do have less Minnesota than I would have liked and really very little overall. They're going to be owned a bit, especially for Garver, Cruz, and Marwin Gonzalez on DK. Let's see who else. What about the Angels? Because we talked about my guy Shohei Ohtani is my home run pick, and Pleco does give up home runs. Are you getting any Angels here? Because they are a team who theoretically should have some opportunity going against Pleco.
Less than I'd like, but I think again this is a function. This is almost like a Friday slate with the number of teams that we have.
It's a lot of. This is the most games we've had on a Saturday. I feel like the entire year.
It is, and it's going to be between 10 and 13 for the rest of the season. By the way, on Saturdays. So
can't wait.
we were spoiled with those 5, 6, 7, and 8 gamers.
I mean, I guess it's easier to fill content for an hour, but yeah, the preparation wise, that's fun. That's good to know, I guess. But no, tell me more about the Angels then.
Their usual guys. Shout out to Seth, my best Twitter enemy, pointed out that Andrelton Simmons was just scratched. So if you are making lineups, you'll want to move him out of your lineups. And if you are just starting to build, go ahead and zero him out until that update comes through. I haven't seen who the new starter is. Let's see. Smith is in. Fletcher is in. Oh man, Regnifo maybe batting. He got dropped, so Fletcher's your new guy in. He's leading off.
What? He went from 1 to 9. He's much less valuable then.
Yes. So there's your little call outs there. But I mean Trout, Ohtani, and Calhoun would be the 3 I want. Wait for it. Angels in the outfield.
What a tough turn there. He was probably excited to get the leadoff spot, maybe make a difference in the lineup today, and now he's just down to the 9 hole. Poor Rengifo.
Well, it's like it's in the manager saying, "Well, we really want you in the 9 hole because it's like having 2 leadoff hitters by each other." It's like, but that's not. That means I get less at bats, coach.
That's good coach PR though. I feel like if you are going to handle that, because I'd be pretty bummed if I were going to hit the leadoff spot, and then you're like, no, you're basically a pitcher to us. Get your ass down there.
Yeah. Well. It happens.
Who else are you getting that we haven't hit? I guess we should talk more about the Dodgers because they are going against Cal Quantrill, who is not a perfect pitcher. I think he's playable sometimes, but going into Dodger Stadium here, going against a Dodgers team who's obliterated right-hand pitching on the year, and this particular lineup they have extremely strong versus right-hand pitching. Though Will Smith is boosting those numbers a bit because Will Smith has been getting very jiggy with it, because that's the same name you see, with a 710 ISO on the year and 35 at bats versus a righty. So a hell of a run for Will Smith so far, a catcher, and intriguing here in this spot because there's only ownership on Jock Peterson and Max Muncy, both lefty hitters going against Cal Quantrill, who's had noticeable lefty splits. And Quantrill actually has been really good versus righties. He's only faced 95 righty batters. Weirdly, he's faced 146 lefties, but only 95 righties. And 1.6 whip and a 5.2 xFIP versus lefties compared to a 0.7 whip and a 2.9 xFIP versus righties, which is a stark difference there. The power given up too. He's only given up a 0.089 ISO to right-handed batters, giving up a 211 ISO to lefties. So something's got to give here, one would think, with Quantrill. You're going to the Dodgers, EMAC. Who are your favorite Dodgers plays?
The guys that are popular, sadly. And I say sadly because I was hoping perhaps they would go a touch overlooked, but it's going to be Peterson, Muncy. Peterson's back to outfield on Yahoo for what it's worth. So Peterson, Muncy, Bellinger. I don't mind Verdugo batting 7th, 3,700 on DK, but then Turner and they're all good. Okay. God, that's a tough lineup. That is a tough lineup.
I think the one thing you can do with this Dodgers lineup, there are ways you could stack it while avoiding some of the chalkier plays. I mean, obviously everybody's going to want the Turners, Muncies, Petersons, and that Force I think in particular. But you still have Cody Seager, who's only 2% owned with a 130 WRC plus versus righties and a 294 batting average and a 195 ISO. Everything looks good for him. Will Smith, who I mentioned, he's going to be in no lineups either because people really aren't full stacking the Dodgers. But on DK, you can get him at catcher at 1% ownership. Alex Verdugo has also been pretty good at 111 WRC plus. He's not going to be owned at all. Matt Beattie, who is a risk to be subbed out at any time, but still 133 WRC plus for him and 120 at bats going against righties. So these are really good hitters top to bottom. So go with some Dodgers. I think it's not a crazy idea to go with some Dodgers stuff.
I concur.
All right. Let's see. Who is going to be your favorite leverage stack today? I don't think you're as much of a leverage player as some of the other guys I do live before lock with, but it is still a spot here. I'm sure you're considering some bats against the high owned pitcher. Who's going to be your favorite team that fits that criteria?
Mm.
Maybe Detroit against Adrian Sampson. People seem to want to talk about Detroit in the YouTube chat.
I think it'd be Detroit, and it would be the Mariners.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, all right, the Mariners. Let's talk about Detroit first, but I want to circle back to the Mariners. I'm with you on Detroit. I think Detroit is in a pretty interesting spot here. There is some ownership going the other way. I think that's certainly going to help out. And Sampson has been bad, and it's not the hottest day, as we mentioned earlier, in Texas, but Sampson's going to be pretty highly owned, almost a quarter of the field on him. Actually, have we gotten an ownership update? We may have. But at least a quarter of the field on him. And that does seem, I should update my ownership, but that does seem like a spot overall where you're getting some leverage on a pitcher who's been bad in a park that's going to enable hitting, even if it's not the hottest day. If there ever were a day for Detroit to have a decent opportunity here, going against a guy that's who just has a profile of Sampson, who really hasn't offered anything, that's probably the spot for it. So how much Detroit do you anticipate having?
Maybe 5%, maybe 10 tops.
Okay.
They don't have much. I mean, without Castellanos anymore, they're not as daunting. They do have the lowest WRC plus with their active roster against righties. It's like 72, 3, 4, somewhere around there. So they score 25% less than the average team against righties. That is not fun.
Yep, you're correct. 72 WRC plus on the year. And as I mentioned earlier, they are getting dragged up a bit in their projected lineup by Travis DeMerite, who's been good in just 5 at-bats going against righties. But yeah, overall, I mean, on the year, 149 ISO versus right-hand pitching for Detroit, 27% K rate almost, and that 72 WRC plus that EMAC mentioned. So it is a bad Detroit team, but also a bad Sampson on the other side. He gives up 48% hard contact, gives up a 253 ISO overall. So in a battle of the bad, I think the hitters can win it. And I don't mind going to them here with the field, though. They do right now, according to the top stacks tool, project for more ownership than they do the chances of being a top stack. So that is bit less than ideal in that respect, but a 4.6 implied total for Detroit, sure, why not? Let's talk about Seattle, because they are one of your teams you mentioned as a potential leverage stack here. What is jumping out to you about them other than the ownership on the other side?
Basically, that's it. I don't mind their lefties. They are relatively solid. They have a lot of them, but you kind of want to go collective. It's an all or nothing with them. I really don't like any one-offs, but let me go over here to that lineup real quick.
Not even a little Vogelbach is a one-off, given that he's got the lefty-righty matchup?
No Vogelbach. Sorry.
Ground ball. You're so dejected saying that. You felt like you betrayed him in some way.
A ground ball pitcher makes it tough. Why can't I get to Seattle Mariners? So yeah, they're all priced appropriately. So I'm gonna want to go all or nothing with them. A top 6 would be the guys I'm looking at. Shout out to Austin Nola, who is first and second base eligible now on DK. He has played. He's outfield eligible on some sites, and then on season-long ESPN, he's catcher eligible. That would be the older brother of Aaron Nola. So just throwing it out there.
I didn't realize he was an older brother. That's interesting. Because he's only been up this year, right?
Correct.
Oh, interesting. Huh. How old is Aaron Nola?
I think he's 3 years younger.
But like mid-20s?
Yeah, I think Austin is 28. So Nola is probably 25.
I didn't realize Nola was that young. All right, I'm learning a lot from you. You always throw out these little tidbits. There's always one thing I learn whenever we do a show. I feel like Aaron Nola was like a guy who was like in his late 20s and is like due to start regressing, but apparently it's the other way around. So yeah, I'm with you conceptually here because you are getting a bunch of lefties in this lineup. And not that Santos matters that much because his splits are pretty even overall, but he is slightly worse versus lefties, gives up a 1.7 whip and a 5.2 xFIP to that side of the plate. And, regardless of whatever special magic fairy dust that the Astros may sprinkle on their pitchers to make them work. And Sanchez, as we mentioned earlier, he does keep the ball down, only a 2.9% home run rate in a park that's been okay for home runs on the year, but still really not historically one that enables power in a meaningful way. Yeah, I think it's an interesting spot because Sanchez is going to be owned and he really hasn't been great, but he keeps the ball down. So it is sort of if the dam breaks, it could be very bad for Aaron Sanchez. And if so, then you'll have 1% owned Seattle stack, it looks like, which is pretty crazy. Yeah. All right. Interesting thought. Anybody else you're getting a little bit overall who we haven't hit on? Because I feel like we've touched on pretty much every team, but there are a few here. The Mets I have a little bit of going against Chris Archer just because he gets hit so hard. They're a team that I'm interested in. Toronto going against Dylan Bundy, I have a little bit of too. I guess out of those two teams, Emac, who do you have more of out of Toronto and the Mets? Or do you have any of either?
Toronto would be where I would lean towards that one.
Okay. Yeah, bad bullpen, power hitting park. Toronto's been getting into form. Actually, Vlad Guerrero, I think really noticeably starting to kind of turn a corner there. And not that he's been bad on the year, but he's been just getting hard contact without actually converting it to anything. So he's either getting a little bit luckier or just things are kind of leveling out for him. But not much ownership on Toronto. And it's a pretty good power spot, especially for the lefties, of which admittedly there are not many in that Toronto lineup.
All right, no pressure, but I'm starting my crunches, and they are going slow. A lot of teams out there. So if you have not yet started, we got 7 minutes until lock.
Yeah, they were moving pretty slowly for me before, so I was glad that most of the lineups got done because I did not want to be riding that one out. You doing it on Firefox or on Chrome?
Chrome, and reminder that you'll want to take Andrelton Simmons out and make sure you check Fletcher, because otherwise he will not be in your lineups if you did not do that.
So one of Alex's pro tips is that he believes, and I think I don't know how much he did the research on this personally, but he believes Firefox crunches faster. So if you want to use one awesome pro tip, that is one thing he said previously.
He also runs multiple computers and multiple browsers to do all of his stuff, which is beyond impressive.
Yeah, the multitasking ability that he has, very Minority Report like, which is probably going from screen to screen. Who's asking? Pedrito PR asking in the premium Slack about the Texas stack. Going against Matt Boyd. Matt Boyd does struggle a bit with power, get a 4.4% home run rate on the year. And being in Texas, even though it's not the hottest day again, it is only mid 80s there, not high 90s like it has been for a lot of this week. I don't like going against Boyd because I think he's good. He gets strikeouts. He has a 33% strikeout rate on the year, 14% swinging strike rate. Texas is better versus, actually, no, they're pretty bad versus left-hand pitching. My bad. They're bad versus left-hand pitching. I'm not crazy about them. I'm probably not going to get there, but what do you think about Texas, Emac?
No, I don't really want to target them against Boyd. That would be a 8 o'clock slate for me. I think they're on the 8 o'clock slate.
And you're playing the night slate too, right? Or the late slate?
Oh, no slates off. No slates off.
So if you are, somebody had DM'd me earlier asking about the night slate, and I'm like, I haven't even looked at anything yet, man. I really can't tell you about that. But the night slate, who would be your picks in that night slate, Emac? Who jumps out the most to you?
The late one is 2 games, so the Dodgers would be key. You're going to be looking at Washington. I feel more 3-man stacks for Washington or Arizona. Dodgers, I'm fine with the full 5 on the late slate. Just try to get over on the field.
Okay. Let's talk about Coors more, because I think we kind of blew past it and haven't talked about it at much depth. And this is kind of an underappreciated Coors game today, ownership-wise, not quite as owned as they have been during the week. And Bumgarner's been good on the year, and I really am not dying to stack against them, even though the team total here is pretty high for Colorado with 6.2 implied runs. San Francisco also getting 5.3 implied runs against John Gray. I don't know. I just didn't really get here much. I have some San Francisco, some Colorado, but really not enough to make a dent in my lineups. Are you going heavy on Coors? You matching the field? How are you approaching it?
I am not getting much at all. It's looking like I'm going to get about 10% Coors at most.
And not the best projected Coors game, I think, overall, where I feel like we've had a couple games this week where these guys have all been in the 10s or so. And both Gray and Bumgarner, for whatever their flaws may be, Gray versus lefties, Bumgarner versus lefties has been a beast going back to last year with a 2.3 xFIP, 1 whip, just giving up a 1.3% on run rate, which one would think is due to come up a little bit, but especially being at Coors. But still, the numbers versus lefties are really egregious, and he is getting a couple lefties in this lineup. And then versus righties too, lower K rate with 20% compared to 29% versus lefties. But he can find some strikeouts here. He's been keeping the ball down pretty well. Some hard contact, but I think Bumgarner's not a guy I'm dying to go against with Colorado. And same thing for John Gray too, who is pretty good going back to last year. Still has some flaws, still gives up some hits, but I feel like generally not a lot of full stack production. So I'm with you. I am not terribly on Coors today, and mostly have many stacks of both sides than anything. Any Cleveland for you? Because their team has been hitting pretty well too, and they got Felix Pena, who does have those bad lefty splits.
No, and that could be a mistake because they have so many good guys that switch hit, and they're all better as lefties.
Yeah, that was a stack I liked a lot yesterday, who did well, even though stupid Franmil Reyes went 0 for 4, and he was looking like, what is the character's name for Major League, who's played by Dennis Haysbert?
It's Pedro Serrano.
Yes. Oh, God, thank you. That was such a brain fart. I was like, I remember Jobu, but not Pedro Serrano. But yeah, he was hitting like Pedro Serrano. He was just taking these gigantic swings and like made a couple. He had one barreled ball, which then just died out the warning track and hurt me a bit, but still a really good hitting lineup. And I think the improvements they've made here, that's now a pretty formidable lineup going against righties. I think a better one versus lefties, but you have the worst hitter in that lineup today is going to be Kevin Plawecki, who's still in just an 86 WRC plus. And they've improved quite a bit here. And Pena, again, really bad versus lefties going back to last year with a 1.5 whip and a 5.2 xFIP. Could be a spot here where Cleveland does some damage again because they've been doing it to pretty much everybody.
All right, sorry, I gotta concentrate here. I'm running down to the wire, trying to sort my lineups.
Checking for questions, seeing if we got anything. Chris Rendon in on the Twins. Twins all day. He's not as high on Houston as he was yesterday, but he does like Bregman here. Bregman really murdered my Houston stacks yesterday with a 0 amongst everybody else getting a home run. Kind of a surprise there. Let's see if there's anybody else that we should hit on. And of course, if you do have any questions, drop them in the chats right now, either the premium Slack or the YouTube chat, because I'm aggressively looking for something else to get us through the finish line here for these last 3 minutes. Yeah, Houston, I may not have enough of based on everything that we have. They are projecting well to be a top stack. They are projected to be the top stack. They also have now slightly more ownership than their potential to be a top stack, but still, they are the number one according to the top stack soul for DK at least. So that's something. Toronto went up too. All right. Toronto ownership could be valuable. Let's see. Baltimore, stack on FanDuel. Terry Wilson is asking. Emac, you're playing FanDuel, right? Are you playing any Baltimore on there?
Not doing FanDuel. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, look, I could see going against Pannone. Pannone is certainly not a great pitcher. He has a 5.6 xFIP on the year. He's got a pretty high fly ball rate. He does have some strikeout ability. I mean, at least a mediocre one, a 21.3% K rate on the year. So I have some Pannone. I could certainly see the logic in going to Baltimore, though. You have Alberto, who not a power guy, but he does get on base. If he gets on base, that could be a problem. He's got a 403 batting average versus lefties. Does Hanser Alberto. Bit of a surprise. But you have decent hitters in that top. I think the thing to me, though, is that bottom of the order is really bad versus lefties. Chris Davis is in the lineup today. He's got a 17 WRC plus versus a lefty pitcher. Steve Wilkerson, who I mentioned earlier, has a -11. So I would not have those guys in my lineup. And honestly, probably not Richie Martin either. I would be okay with stacking the other guys who are on the top of the order.
All right, here's where I landed. Nola, 40. Sanchez, 30. Sampson, 28. Buehler, 21. Boyd, 20. Gibson, 15. Strasburg, 11. Bauer, 10. A little more than I thought. Garver, 16 is my best catcher. I got Maldonado in there. Hat tip to Chris Rendon. Rhys Hoskins is my top first baseman. Outfielder Nelly Cruz is 5th. Aaron Judge, 48%. So he came in anywhere I did not have a Yankee stack. He came in. That will save me ideally. Gleyber Torres coming in at 36%. So thankfully, Cruncher saved me on this one. LeMahieu at 13. He is dual position eligible, as is Torres. Yeah. Oh, and CJ Cron is back. So should call out for him.
There you go. All right. So those are Emacs things. And now we are locked. So please hit that like button before you go. We're here on a Saturday for you guys. We're here. We're your buddies. We're hanging out with you all weekend long. Emac in particular here all weekend long this weekend. So please hit that like button and support the channel. Help us keep the lights on. Of course, if you want to play that night slate, Emac gave some tips about it earlier, but also we have the ownership projections, the regular player projections for the night slate. So go use that promo code live before locks, get half off your first month of Osmo Plus. Go to osmo.com/join. And again, our night slate content is really some of the best in the industry. Our management team has been playing night slates and winning a lot of money at them for longer than either Emac or I have been working here. So please go check it out now. Use that promo code live before lock at osmo.com/join. Get half off your first month and all that night slate content. Emac, what is your weekend schedule for the rest of the weekend?
Josh and I tomorrow at noon. I will be eating dinner and then writing the Spotlight Hitters article, and that'll run it out. Oh, office hours at 3. I know some people are asking how we do leverage, how we set up our player pools. Happy to answer those questions. 3 o'clock in the Osmo Premium Office channel, or Premium Office Hours channel. All
right, so go check out Emac there. And next weekend you're off, right?
I am off next weekend.
All right, so no Emac next Saturday. I think next Saturday is going to be Jake and probably Josh, but keep your eyes peeled here. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell to know whenever we have content coming up on the channel. And we'll be back with you guys again soon. Thank you guys for watching. We appreciate the support. Hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. And of course, good luck.
All right, hit that like button. You can follow Chris at Chris Spags on Twitter. It is Osmo_COM. It is at EMAC DFS. Shout out to one John Carlton McPherson. Love you, Dad. It was a hell of a run. With that, gamers, good luck.